Hey there, children. It's me, your teacher. Well, my official name is Grimbles D. Grumbles. You can call me Schizo G, as my prescriptions ran out and it's too expensive to go to the doctor and get them refilled. Have you guys heard of Insane Clown Posse? They're great. Their latest album, the 2021 Yum Yum's Bedlam, is a feminist masterpiece that pays tribute to the divine nature of the fair sex while also acknowledging they can be devious, murdering psychopaths. Actually, almost all of Insane Clown Posse's music is highly feminist in nature. For a band that talks about murdering people to an alarming degree, their music always seems to have strong messages about respecting women. If you were to ask me to rank them as influential feminist icons, I'd place them near the top, above Margaret Thatcher, Nancy Reagan, and even Nobusuke Kishi. That's right, Nobusuke Kishi. They're bigger feminists than him, and he was always there to comfort women. Yum Yum Bedlam was so good, in fact, that it got me to start listening through ICP's entire discography. I was halfway through Bang Pow Boom when I realized that these feminist icons didn't know how magnets work. It also occurred to me that with the American education system being what it is, many of you might not know how magnets work. Fortunately for everyone watching, I moonlight as an MRI repair technician, and I think I might be able to shed some light on this. Specifically MRIs. I don't actually know how real magnets work. ICP intro aside, I don't actually listen to their music. I just needed a clever way to segue into the topic of this video. Also, fun fact, did you know ICP was owned by Disney in the 90s? That's not a joke, that's a real fact you can look up. I assume they got picked up because the idea of torturing and murdering people to fuel an entertainment empire appealed to Disney at first, but they were quickly let go when The Great Milenko hit shelves and a PAX group of Baptists bullied Disney into dropping them. Once again, I'm not making any of this up. Now, there are two types of MRIs primarily used in medical imaging: permanent magnets and superconductive magnets. Permanent magnets are currently going the way of the dodo, as you can only get around 0.35 Tesla field strength from them. They're crude and inexpensive way of generating magnet field by stacking magnets on top of each other. It's an older system that may have worked for your parents' generation, but so did asbestos. Superconducting magnets, on the other hand, are a whole different ballgame. To understand how they work, I want you to imagine you're on an ice skating rink when you notice you're moving without sliding your skates. Shortly after that, you'll realize that you're persistently going in circles on the rink without slowing down or shifting in any way. You're trapped on this rink, going in circles forever, unable to stop unless someone were to physically grab a brick from outside the rink and throw it at you to stop your movement. In the real world, electricity takes the place of you in this metaphor, and the ice skating rink are giant coils we bathe in liquid helium. The temperature of liquid helium is about 4 degrees Kelvin, give or take, but it's enough to allow certain metals to reach a state of zero friction, where electricity can move through the coils without slowing down. We then seal the magnet in a vacuum and put a couple hundred amps of current into it until we have the correct magnetic field and call it a day. I'm not entirely sure how Heike Ohms came up with this concept, but I explicitly remember when I was in magnet school, my teacher told us that when superconductive technology was first being developed as a physical thing and not just theoretical, DARPA considering using it to make tractor beams. I'm not entirely sure how true this is, but the idea of the US government taking medical breakthroughs and turning it into a weapon, it just feels on point for me. So now that you understand how we get these magnets to magnet, you might be wondering how we use it to acquire medical images. That's a little more complicated. You see, we've discovered that inside a magnetic field, your hydrogen molecules stand upright all throughout your body. What that means is that hypothetically, we have a complete roadmap of your entire human anatomy based on how much hydrogen is in certain parts of you. But we don't stop there. Once we have you in the magnetic field and all of your hydrogen molecules are standing up straight, we turn on the RF amplifiers. These amplifiers generate radio waves that disrupt your hydrogen molecules and cause them to fall over. Think of it like a bowling ball hitting a strike, or a bunch of Ritalin-infused children being unleashed on a piñata store. Your hydrogen molecules get knocked down over and over again by the RF waves, while constantly trying to stand back up straight as they're being pulled upright by the magnetic field. While this is going on, tiny antennas laid around your body are constantly switching on and off. As the RF is released, they turn off. Then, as the RF subsides briefly, they turn on to listen to the slightest release of energy as these hydrogen molecules attempt to stand up before being pushed down again. This is why whenever you're in an MRI, you'll hear a pulsed womp, womp, womp noise. It's the RF emitters turning on and off to allow the antenna to collect the data from your battered hydrogen molecules. Now, quick disclaimer, as far as I'm aware, the next few steps in the process are proprietary between manufacturers. So I'm going to skip over some of the more technical details here as I don't want to spill trade secrets and get fired. Just know that this data is collected and put into K-Space. What is K-Space, you might ask? Pure magic. Effectively, the data received by these antennas need to be processed. We send this data to another dimension called the K-Space, where the raw signals from the antenna are stored. As the signals received from the antennas are analog, we need to process it. To do this, we go through a process called FFS, or Fast Fourier Transform. Explaining all the details of how this works would make the video run too long, and I'd probably be able to mark here as the exact point where people stopped watching the video. So I'll just say the K-Space is a temporary holding place for the data that we receive before algorithms inside a computer transform it into readable images for the radiologists. What does all this mean? It means that when somebody says that MRIs are a safe imaging modality that doesn't harm your body, by all accounts, they're right. You spend a couple of minutes to an hour inside a low-intensity microwave, and the doctor gets to see a reconstruction of all the hydrogen in your anatomy. I'm suspicious that MRIs can lead to short-term memory loss, but as I have no proof and I always forget to document my findings, I'll say that for legal reasons, we have no evidence that MRIs negatively affect your memory. With all that out of the way, let's get to the bonus part of this video. As MRIs are not something anyone with a social life knows anything about, it's always weird to me when it becomes a focal point in media. In fact, I'm going to show you a few examples. This first example of this is in Terminator Genisys. You know, the 2015 Terminator movie that sucked. Not to be confused with the 2009 Terminator movie that sucked, or the 2019 Terminator movie that sucked. Anyway, here's the clip. This is somewhat accurate. All superconducting MRIs have at least one kill switch in them that lets them lose magnetic field rapidly. Why do we do this? Well, let's say that the cleaning crew decided to polish the floors of the MRI suite and didn't realize the MRI was turned on. Or say, you had a schizophrenic patient sneak in 1911 into the scan room before his exam, and the gun got stuck in the side of the magnet with a round in the chamber. You'd need a way to safely turn the magnet off. By the way, that 1911 story actually happened. A coworker and I ended up jamming like 3 zip ties behind the hammer and pulled the gun off the magnet by its handle with a rope. Anyway, back to the video. Alright, so theoretically, using movie magic, John Connor just ramped the magnet from 0 field to fully ramped. What's weird about this is that the fastest I've ever been able to ramp a magnet to field at my job is about 45 minutes. And that's after a 2-hour wait. Considering that appears to be an Imerys Visius system, based on the Siemens Vario product line, not only am I not sure what that ancient system is doing in the year 2029, I've never heard of anyone ramping those magnets in under 2 hours, let alone 10 seconds. None of these inaccuracies thus far are as bad as this. Notice the part where they increased the field strength of the magnet there? If you wanted to do that in the real world, you need to increase the amount of windings that the coils have. You would not add more amperage to the unit. Adding more amperage, especially that quickly, causes a magnet to quench. In case you're wondering what a quench is, I'll remind you of the ice skating metaphor where I mentioned someone throwing a brick to stop someone from free skating. That's a quench. It uses a small electrical pulse to put the slightest amount of resistance in an MRI to cause it quickly to lose its magnetic field. The MRI then contains a controlled explosion through a venting tube that leads out the top of the magnet and out the side of the building. Fun fact, at one point, Siemens, one of the major MRI manufacturers in the world, had those vent lines designed to look like shower heads. I'm not entirely sure who on the German R&D team okayed an exhaust port to look like a shower head and dispel toxic gas, but it's been the source of comedy for people who do my job for decades now. Alright, moving on, I'm gonna stop letting a terrible sci-fi movie directed by the guy who did Sex and the City and the worst Thor movie live rent-free in my head. Instead, we'll move on to the next clip, which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the source material it was coming from.
We couldn't give you an MRI, the metal you see. But even if we were to extract it, you would most likely suffer a brain hemorrhage.
Now, in all honesty, this sequence is not only correct, it's medically sound. From mentioning that Snake would turn into a human claymore if he was put into an MRI, to the attenuation of the body in the x-rays. It's all proper. The issue here is the timeline. You see, MRI is a very computer-dependent modality, and the work we could do in 1975 was limited to spectroscopy. Effectively, even if Snake wasn't a comatose Cenobite in 1975 and could be put into an MRI, we'd be limited to only brain work, and even then, we'd only be able to tell what the chemical composition of his anatomy in that particular area was. Images would be beyond the technology of the day and age. Now, before I close this video, when I was doing research on the Metal Gear Solid timeline, I verified if the hospital that Big Boss was staying in would even be able to afford an MRI. The following discussion about how my autism hyper-focused on the realism of MRI technology in an alternate timeline where giant robot nuclear warhead launchers were bipedal and women could spread deadly viruses just by talking was entertaining to say the least. Now, that's all for this time. Depending on how motivated I was, the next video should be another game video. Or maybe that one came first. I'm not actually sure as I'm currently doing both these videos simultaneously across 2 computers. Either way, see you next time. Actually, I don't have anything against Juggalos or Insane Clown Posse or any of that stuff. Actually, I think Juggalos are super hot, and anybody in the year 2022 when this video is being recorded who's all like, "Oh man, I got a thing for Clussy," like you're the next evolutionary step of a Juggalo kid. Sorry, I don't make the rules.